His greatest accomplishment was loving the people he loved to the point that they knew it and being loved in return.
Hey guys, it's Cathy Heller. Welcome back to Abundant Ever After. So last week we had just an incredible time. We had a retreat for 3 days in Southern California, and it was right on the beach, and it was just so exquisite to be with about 100 women who came in from different parts of the globe and opened their hearts and set down so many things that they just don't need to carry anymore, and just felt that abundance and that freedom and those creative downloads and just that inner peace was truly amazing. And to be totally honest, I really wasn't sure, and I told them this, I wasn't sure that I would even be able to host that retreat, but I decided that we would just go ahead and not cancel it, and I gave myself permission to just show up, and it was incredible. It was actually so healing. And when I got there, I decided to share a little bit about my experience, what it was like to be with my dad in his last days, and some of the beautiful things that I learned from my dad. And I felt so held, and I felt like the community was just right there with me. And I'm actually so grateful that the retreat was planned ahead of time, right after the funeral and right after we set Shiva, because it really gave me the opportunity to see that I don't need to be anything other than being raw, and that there's something so potent and magical about just being truly present in whatever is true. So I wound up sharing this conversation about my dad, and I just allowed the 3 days to kind of flow as they needed to, and there was just so much love. And the truth is that as painful as the experience with my dad has been, there's so much depth and meaning and purpose and clarity that comes from grief and from experiences that we go through in our life like this. So for today's episode, I wanted to honor my dad, and I also wanted to share with you a piece of what I shared at the retreat. I think that there is something really important that has come through for me in the last few weeks, and the kind of wisdom that I hope that I'll continue to see through the lens of what I'm seeing now. So without any further ado, I just want to share this with you, and I hope that this feels helpful and meaningful and inspiring. And I just want to say ahead of time, thank you so much for being here and being with me through this.
So what I want to do this morning is share from my heart. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what happened to me in the last 10 days, 2 weeks. And I think that that will be really just beautiful. So my father passed away. You guys know that. And it's really divine. Everything is so divine because in the throes of that experience, obviously, you don't know the timing. And so I flew to Florida. I arrived the morning of July 1st. I took a red eye Saturday night. So I was like, is this retreat going to happen? Am I going to have to cancel the retreat? Am I going to even be at the retreat? Is he going to be in hospice for 3 weeks? Is he going to be in hospice for 3 minutes? Is he going to be in hospice? Like, there was just a lot of unknown. And for whatever the divine order of things, I'm here. So it feels really divine that like all of this just is right now. And it feels like a gift that I can give you, having come out of one of the most transcendent, stunning, heartbreaking, gorgeous experiences of my life. And so I hope that you only have a deeper experience because of that. I know for me, life feels like it is in Technicolor right now. Life is so mesmerizing. Every color is brighter. Every thing is slowed down. I feel like I can just receive on such a deeper level. So hopefully you will also start to catch that drift. So what I want to share with you is a couple things, and then I'm going to play you a piece of music, and then I'm going to actually read you something that my father wrote that I found in his study, which was just so unbelievably beautiful. So I flew down there Saturday night on a red eye. And my youngest daughter insisted, she's like, Mom, I'm coming with you. You're not going by yourself. And I really was like, no, go later. Daddy's going to go tomorrow. And she's like, I'm going with you. We've got this. And she wrote me a letter that said, I love you so much and I'm right by your side. I took a picture of it, and much is spelled with an E at the end. Much. I love you so much. So we flew down, and at that point, it was a very slow but very fast process. My dad has had leukemia for 4 years, but he's been really good about managing it. And eventually he had to be transfusion dependent, but that was something that seemed like it was working for him until he got pneumonia. And very quickly he declined because I learned something I didn't know, which is that if you have leukemia like he did, he had AML leukemia, which means he had no immune system left, no white blood cells, literally 0.1, I think is what he had at the end. So he didn't have a fever because your fever is a sign that you have immunity that's fighting back. So by the time they went to the hospital, they thought he had they didn't understand why he was coughing. So my stepmom thought there's really nothing so serious. He has no fever. The doctor said, right, he doesn't have a fever because he can't fight anything. So at that point, he has pneumonia everywhere. And then the antibiotics can only do what they do, but they can't do much without white blood cells. So very quickly, it was Thursday night. I was walking into Bobby Kennedy's house. We were about to go watch the debate. And my sister calls and says, I think you need to fly down. And I was like, oh, okay. So I at this event, I'm looking at flights. And then for whatever the reason, I woke up Friday morning, tried to get a flight. And then my stepmom said, well, we're actually going into hospice today. So we're leaving the hospital today. We won't even be at our house from the hospital until 6 p.m. So you could fly tomorrow if you want, because it's going to be a lot of transitioning and hospital gear and all this stuff and beds and whatever. Long story short, so I get there Saturday, but my dad had not opened his eyes since Thursday night. So she said, he'll wait for you. And I didn't really know what that means, but I kind of know what that means. And all of that was very intense. So I was talking to my dad sort of in the 5D, whatever you need, you don't have to wait for me. If you want to wait for me, I didn't want to put him in harm's way. But sure enough, I got there Sunday morning and he had not opened his eyes since Thursday night and he was in home hospice. And I sat by his bed and I just said, Dad, I love you forever. I love you forever. And I love everything. And I have it all with me. And I'm sorry if I ever did anything I didn't call you back or I didn't, you feel in the ends of these moments, you just feel would it have killed me to text a longer text? He would write me the most amazing things and I would write back love you. And it's just you know what I mean? So I sat there and the hospice nurse was sitting on the couch and my dad wasn't awake. And I just didn't leave his side. And then I started telling him everything, just anything, normal things. I told him Maddie just lost a tooth. Just told him regular things. And then I was telling him remember Dad, remember when we went to Cape Cod? Remember this? And it was really beautiful. And then I started to sing to him because I realized, why don't I sing to him? So I just started singing every song that he loves. In my mind, I'm going to Carolina. I sang him that. And then just any song that he loves. Barry Manilow's song that he used to play when I was little. Stevie Wonder, the Beatles. I sang him everything. And then I sang him my song. And now I've been there since 6:15 in the morning. Now it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I sang him my song and he opened his eyes and he turned his head and he just goes, that's Cathy's song. And then he went like this and he went really opened his eyes and he saw me. And then he said, where were you? I was waiting for you. I said, I'm right here. I've been here all day. And then he was awake. And then he said, I'm so thirsty. I said, oh, let me get you some water. And so I was sponging him. They have these ways that they like sponge them water. And because he had pneumonia, it's like they didn't want him to have more fluid. They didn't want him to be more uncomfortable or choke on it. But I was giving him these little sponges of water, and he kept saying to me, "Oh, it's so wonderful to have you here. And I love you so much." And I go, "Dad, I know now, like, how much you love me." And I had this experience. This is, I guess, part of what I want to like share. The experience I had was the experience of my heart completely opening. And we walk around sometimes thinking that our heart is open. It could be more open. And I've gotten years of text messages and phone calls and birthday cards and events and things with my dad. But I realized in these moments that I had robbed myself unconsciously of receiving it deeper. Because my dad used to say, "I love you like fireworks." And I was like, "I know, Dad," but like the way people love you, the ones who really love you, I bet you could get it more. I bet you could really get it more. And we're here to be receivers, right? And so in these last few days with my dad, I was like, it's so obvious that when your heart truly opens and it truly receives love on this level, the level of abundance and wholeness that you feel is so absolute. It's like sitting in that hospice room. I was kissing his cheeks, holding his hands, rubbing his face, feeding him this little sponges of water. And I didn't leave that room all day Sunday, all day Monday. He passed away Wednesday morning. Hours around the clock. And I'm telling you, if somebody would have walked in and said, "Hey, do you want to go to the mall?" Or, "Hey, do you want a concert ticket?" It's like nothing was missing and nothing was needed and nothing comes close to the degree of absolute magic when you have your heart completely open and you are so seeing the world through new eyes with the clarity of everything that actually matters. The room in hospice he was in his office, and on the wall in front of him was his doctorate. He had this PhD, this master's, and my stepmom they've been together for 24 years and they're so in love that I kept saying to her, people are going to tell you, like, "I'm so sorry, I know what this is like." And they don't, because the level of what they had was, I've never seen it. My mom says, "I'm so grateful he had that because I never loved him like that." Like, they're really magical together. But she was telling all the hospice nurses, "This man, he went to Columbia. He's a doctor. He's this." And I'm looking at these things on his walls, and then I'm looking at him looking at me. His greatest accomplishment was loving the people he loved to the point that they knew it and being loved in return. He didn't care at all about what was on that wall. None of that. So it's just it's sobering and stunning and awe-inspiring to come back home out of this thing all the way down into here. And you're like, "Oh my gosh, how distracted am I most of the time from what is my purpose, my abundance, my gift, I'm like, the obsession, the being of obsessively grateful is all I can tell you I feel right now about every little thing, which is amazing. I'll just tell you because I want to share like a story about my dad with you. And there's so many stories, but I'm just going to tell you this one story. So my parents got divorced when I was about 12, and it was excruciating and terrible. And I now in hindsight see exactly why that needed to happen, because they both had similar injuries in terms of stuff in their heart. and they couldn't help each other because there was this similar ways that they felt broken. So it was kind of like they were going around in circles, but it was really, really painful at the time. And he left. He actually married another person who he's not married. He had a second wife before his third wife. And that was a really dark period. So my sister and I were not invited to that wedding. He felt very guilty. He sort of lost it in terms of his sort of alignment for a minute. So that wasn't good. When I was 20, my dad and I kind of came back together, and here's what happened. So I was studying abroad in Barcelona for a semester. And so now picture like the age of 12 to the age of 20. That's a decent chunk of time. And there was a lot of sadness and pain. And I worried a lot about my mom, who wasn't doing well at all. So here I am in Barcelona, and I'm staying in a dorm, and there's a knock on the door, and I go and open the door, and my father is standing there, totally out of context for so many reasons, and now in Barcelona. So I'm very confused. And he says, please don't shut the door. And I really wanted to. And for some reason, God gave me incredible strength. And I had the clarity in that moment. I said, I can either shut the door, which would feel good on like an ego level, or I could forgive him and begin the rest of my life. And for some reason, I just opened the door, and he said, can we go somewhere and talk? And I noticed he didn't have any luggage or anything with him. And I thought, like, what's going on? And so we took a long walk, and he told me that they broke up. And then he said over the last week, he wanted to call me. He wanted to call my sister. He wanted to do all these things. He wanted to right the ship. We had a really, really, really long talk. And he said, so I just drove straight to the airport. I didn't pack anything. I called your school. I was going to drive up to see you in school, but they said you weren't there. So I drove straight to the airport, and I just got on a plane and then took a train. And here I am. And it was very intense and beautiful and sad and heartbreaking. Anyway, we then took a week trip together in Spain. I took a week off of school. We rented a car. So I'll just tell you a sweet memory of that. First of all, in Barcelona, there's a stunning park, the Gaudi Gruel, like Park Gruel. It's on the top of the city. Looks like Candyland. It's so stunning. And my dad, we're like there's escalators that take you all the way to the top. And we were about to get on, and he said, wait, I need to go get a sketch pad. And I was like, okay. And he's a pretty good visual artist. So he finds a little store, and he gets a little pad and a pencil. And I said, what's that for? He goes, nothing. And we get to the top, and he puts me in this little seat, and he goes, I want to draw you. He goes, people come to Spain to see the most beautiful architecture, but I just came to see you, and you're the most beautiful thing in the world. They drew the most beautiful. He's so talented. He drew like this sketch of me, and he was so happy. And he was in so much pain because he felt so much guilt, because he's like, your mom and I, it's like one story, but like you got caught in that crossfire, and it was like killing him. And by the time he like got to his senses, he missed so much time, you know? Anyway, one little sweet story. I'll tell you one more story. So we rented a car, and we decide that we're going to drive somewhere. And we say, oh, why don't we go into the mountains? Because in the south of France, not the south of France everyone talks about, they talk about like Nice and Monte Carlo, but then there's the other whole part of the country, which is the Pyrenees Mountains, south of France. And we're like, let's drive into the mountains in France. That would be so beautiful. So we rent a car, and we're driving, and I fall asleep, and I wake up like 55 minutes later, and I see a sign for the Salvador Dali Museum. And I go, Dad, I'm not like the expert on art, but I think Dali is not French. I think he's Spanish. And he goes, did I just drive an hour in the wrong direction? And I was like, so we laughed so hard. Like, I was like, what are you doing? Like, oh my God, we laughed so hard. Then we drove the hour back. Because it was like, It was like a 40-minute drive into France, but we went deeper into Spain. So fine. I figured it out. So then we get into the south of France and we just decide to look for like a town. Like we had no plan. So every town in this little mountain side of France is so, my dad used to say they all look like a cake because all the towns are built like this and there's a church on top. And they're just like postcards. It's so, so beautiful. You can't even imagine. So we drive into this one little town, not knowing anything. And we like find a little bed and breakfast and the woman thinks we're a couple and I'm going to like throw up. I'm like, are you kidding me? Vomit. So she's like, but I only have one room. I'm like, she's like, it has 2 double beds. I'm like, fine. And then I have to hear him snoring, which was like a whole thing, but fine. So then we wake up the next morning and we don't know what to do. And we just have like jeans and sweatshirts. And we find out that there's a festival that night in this town. So we're like, oh, let's go to the festival. So we walk that evening up to the top of the town where the festival is in this beautiful old church. And it turns out that there's a famous cellist, Pablo Casal, who was from this town. And this festival happens every year for him. And it's all his music. And so my dad loves the cello and loves music like that. And so do I. So we're like, great, let's get tickets. And when we get to the door, there's no tickets left. And it was the most perfect thing because everyone's dressed to the nines. We're wearing sweatshirts and jeans. We have no tickets. And we wait. And the woman says, well, if you wait till the end, like maybe there'll be like a seat that somebody doesn't take. So we stood there. People file in and it's this beautiful old church and the music starts to play and there are no seats. And the woman, she kind of like thought we were so like sweet. She's like, listen, you know what you could do? You know how when you enter a building sometimes or like an old church, there's like a vestibule. So you open the doors and there's like a little foyer. Then you open the doors, then you go into the church. So in the little foyer, there's a bench. And she goes, want to just sit right here? So my dad and I like sit on this bench and like are like listening through the door. And for 2 hours, we listened to the most beautiful music. And he held my hand. He's like, this is my favorite moment ever. And he's like, I have the best seat in this church. And I just want to play you the music that we heard because I have it. This is what we heard. Just to wrap up, you know, when I say we're someone because we're some of the one, I mean it. This is an infinite field. And sitting with my dad last week, watching him take his last breath, the energy that was once inside the vessel, which was the body, was no longer there. I was literally there to see that. And thankfully because we had different hospice nurses each day. And the one that was there was like very spiritual. She was from Jamaica and she had this like just really powerful, beautiful presence. And she was like, he's here now, but like right here. And we were all in that. And it was so obvious that this was no longer being contained in the vessel. So now it's everywhere all at once, right? All of that. So when we really see further than we see in the physical lens, then that meditation we did on the beach is really the call that we need to be reminded of, that each of us has the same capacity to play the same song, and we each have the same capacity to turn on the radio with the best signal. And what's really cool is that just like the periodic table of elements, just like different herbs and different rocks and different stones and different there's rose quartz, and then there's lucite. And just like that, just like an orchestra has different instruments, the way the infinite works, the way that God works is it's not sameness, it's oneness. So an orchestra is meant to manifest with wood instruments and brass instruments and string instruments, and all of that is not the same, but it's one. And when you go into an ice cream store and there's 31 flavors, they're all different manifestations of this one that come out in different ways. And each one of us is that missing, unique, never was, never will be before imprint of the divine, right? And so to really understand that, the question I've gotten more than any other question is basically a version of who am I to do this? And the better question is, who are you not to do this? We're all someone, we're some of the one, and we're needed. And we're not needed for our own sake to prop up our ego. We're needed to be that Wi-Fi for everybody else to come back to that one within inside of themselves. And so to continue to know that and claim that, it's the opposite of ego. There's humility in that, right? Is really letting go of the Cathy Heller part of you and really moving into that deep oneness piece of you that has the capacity to be in flow, which means something bigger than you is coming through. So we each have this unique signal, and it's like watching fireworks. And when you watch fireworks, each one is slightly different than the one before. And I'll just share that my dad passed away on July 3rd, and his funeral was July 5th, and July 4th was a difficult day for obvious reasons, but also difficult because instead of going right to the burial, which would have felt like the next thing to do, we had people flying in, and so it needed to be the next morning. It happened to be July 4th, and my dad used to say, "I love you like fireworks." And I didn't want to go to the fireworks because I wasn't in the mood to be around people and music and ice cream cones. And my husband said, in our room, we were staying in this tower overlooking the ocean right across the street from their place. He's like, "I know the view will be amazing. It's the 24th floor. Let's just go up there." And so we watched the fireworks, and then it occurred to me that my dad brought the fireworks, right? It was just so uncanny that it was July 4th, because that was what he would say all the time. "You're like fireworks, and I love you like fireworks." When I would see you, he would say, "When you come in the room, it's like fireworks." And then I said, "Dad, what does heaven look like?" And he said, "Just like this." And I shared this with a couple of you, but I posted on Instagram, and I posted a picture of my dad that my stepmom had sent me when they were in the hospital. He asked the nurse for a pen, and there were these cups in the hospital that had these little like circles and lines. And my stepmom sent me a picture, and he had drawn faces in the circles and then written my name and my daughter's names on the circles. After I spoke with you this morning, that was the first time I got up, and I walked over there to get a cup. Those are the cups from the hospital. Those green cups with the circles that you've been drinking out of all day. Yeah. I've never seen these cups in my life. And I host events at my home all the time, and these are biodegradable. And Elise is looking for products like that. And I hosted a few events. I would have seen these. It's just really interesting. And I go like, oh my God, that's just so crazy. And my dad loved sailboats. And so he collected sailboats, and he lived on the ocean, and we went on sailboats and this and that. When we planned this retreat 4 or 5 months ago, it obviously didn't occur to me that sitting here today, I look outside this window, and I said to my dad at the funeral, I said, "I'll see you in fireworks. I'll see you in sailboats." And I went through a list, and then we're surrounded by sailboats right now. Our last retreat in California was in Malibu, in a beautiful place up in the mountains. Not a single sailboat there. And we were going to go back there because it's really special. And for some reason, no, let's go to the marina. I just feel like we should go to the marina. It's a Ritz. It's pretty. We're just near the airport, but it's also near the beach. And there's sailboats. So my dad loved the ocean so much, and we talked about it this morning. And he's also a Pisces, which is really interesting. And I want to say this to you. I had a healing by this beautiful Reiki healer about a month ago before my dad passed. And she said, she's never met me before. And she said, she's working on me. And she says, wow, you have such big energy. You're an air sign, right? I said, yeah, I'm a Gemini. She said, there is a man in your life who has to be that you have a water sign as one of the men in your life. I said, actually, my dad's a Pisces and my husband's a Scorpio. And she said, let me tell you why you've manifested what you've manifested. She said, in order for a tree to go super tall and for the branches to go super wide, it has to go not just into the earth, but so far deep into the earth that it hits water. Because water is life. It's unshakable. It's immovable. And it's what gives life to that tree. It's not the earth. The earth can be shaken, not the water. And for you to manifest, there's something about you that just goes so deep into something so nourishing, that's so protecting you, that allows you to feel safe enough to go super, super tall and super high. And it was so powerful that she said that to me. It completely changed the way I looked at my dad and my husband. And I never even saw them as connected at all until I realized they are both water signs and they do both really protect me. And the water is that, right? And it just starts to help you see oh, in order for us to manifest, to go as high can be, right? We are air signs and on some level, we're all of this, right? We have all of this in us. There's something about plugging into what's below, all the way deep, deep, deep inside of us, that stillness, that ocean within. And I talk about that, right? We talk about that ocean, and those waves are really just an illusion. The ocean is not defined by what's frenetic. It's defined by what is so deep and so still and so wise and so grounded in the deepest way, so seated. And so I want to just bring that to your awareness as you're sitting here on the ocean. And also to say about the ocean, we've talked about how when you throw a stone into the water, it makes a ripple. When you throw a really big stone, it makes a really big ripple. And I think in simple terms, what we're wanting to do is to a bigger signal, right? The more coherent, the more rooted into this depth, this ocean within, the more every action, every way that we walk through the world. I'll say one last thing. The rabbi who came to the Shiva the other day said, what's amazing about light is if you light a candle, just by walking by it, it'll flicker. And then you really see how just your presence, just walking by it, affects the effect of your energy, right? And light responds because light is so alive. We are all affecting each other all the time. Our presence is affecting, right? But when we are coherent, when we become the most loving version of ourselves, first of all, that is the deepest thing that we seek, right? That higher love inside of ourselves. And then when we go through the world, it's like that ripple in the water in this field. It just gets bigger and it just loves everything into life. And so I hope that over the next 3 days, you just keep feeling your way deeper and deeper into what is so the essence of yourself, that you feel that you've walked home to that, and that it feels that there are so many gifts and so much wisdom just right here that you've always known, that you're just allowing yourself to get off this other ride and just come back into this part of you that is the mic drop. It doesn't need to do anything other than just be in order to impress, literally imprint. And to be impressive is to be coming from this place. So I'm hoping that you just keep kind of coming into that more and more. And when you leave here and you emerge more and more as that, it's amazing the impact that has and how people will feel that.
I hope that this was healing, and I hope that it allowed you to open your heart, even if it was just a little more. All right, here are the takeaways. Number 1, we walk around sometimes thinking that our heart is open, but it could be more open. We're here to be receivers. The way people love you, the ones who really love you, you could really get it more. Number 2, nothing is missing. Nothing is needed. Nothing comes close to the degree of absolute magic when you have your heart open and you're seeing the world through eyes that are new, that have clarity, and you can see what actually matters. Number 3, our greatest accomplishment is loving the people we love to the point that they know it and allowing them to love us in return. Number 4, it's not sameness, it's oneness. Each of us is a missing, unique, never was, never will be before imprint of the divine. We're all someone, we're some of the one. Number 5, we're all needed, not for our own sake or to prop up our ego. We're needed to be this signal that helps other people come back to what's really within themselves that is divine. And number 6, when we become the most loving version of ourselves, that's the deepest thing that we seek. It's that higher love inside of ourselves. Then we go through the world. It's like we put this ripple into the water, and it's something that impacts everything around us. And that love loves everything into life. I really can't tell you in words how much I love you and how much it means to me. The way that you've supported me, the comments that you've left on my Instagram, the messages, the emails, the love, the prayers you've sent for me. I'm so grateful. And I hope that you can hear it in my voice. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We have really beautiful episodes prepared for you. Please continue to follow along on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if any of this resonates for you, please leave us a review. And if you know one person who you think might benefit from this episode, share it with them or post about this episode or share the link on your Instagram. And finally, if you want to join the street team for my book launch, there's so many cool things that we're going to do for those of you on the street team. There's going to be a free ticket to a live event. There's going to be bonus sessions with me on Zoom. So many goodies. If you want to be a part of that, you can go to cathyheller.com/launch and you can apply to be on the street team. I love you so much. Have a beautiful week.